Welcome to Human Risk, a podcast dedicated to the understanding of human behaviour as a risk. Here's your host, Christian Hunt.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, if you've read the episode title, you'll know that this is going to contain some adult language. So if you're listening with little people within earshot, you might want to select something else. With that said, on with the show. Now, if there's one thing I struggle with, it's getting shit done. I don't mean stuff. I mean the shitty things that we really don't enjoy doing. Now, getting shit done shouldn't be complicated. And yet somehow, at least for me, it is. We're surrounded by productivity tools, endless hacks, and more color-coded to-do lists than any human could ever need. But despite all of that, actually making progress often feels like wading through treacle. There's always a meeting, a distraction, or a shiny new app promising to fix it all. But let's be honest, most of the time we don't need better tools, we need better ways of thinking about the shit itself, which is where today's guest comes in. Claus Raasted calls himself an overpaid Rockstar consultant. We explore what that means in our discussion. He wears a Batman suit to conferences. I don't mean he dresses as Batman, I mean he wears a suit with Batman on it. He runs events in Polish castles, and he's written 46 books, including his latest one called Claus Raasted's Little Book of Getting Shit Done, which, amazingly, he's giving away for free. But underneath this tongue-in-cheek persona, he's a really serious thinker with refreshingly practical ideas about how to do better work. Claus helps people and organizations reframe their approach to getting shit done, not by pushing harder, but by redesigning how the work is approached in the first place. On this episode, we explore why reframing matters, how the queue for the toilets at conferences is a design opportunity, and how having 2 washing machines might be a smarter life decision than it sounds. We talk about what it means to embrace your quirks, how humor can be a strategic asset, and why sometimes the most effective way to stand out is to stop pretending to fit in. If you've ever struggled with procrastination, wondered why your systems never stick, or wanted to make work feel less like a slog and more like play, this is the episode for you. Claus is an amazing thinker who's got some incredible and incredibly simple ideas for how we can approach the world. It's a really engaging discussion. It's Claus Raasted on getting shit done. Claus, welcome to the Human Risk podcast.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you on the show, and I say that very frequently, but in this case, I genuinely am, because I came across you on LinkedIn, and I just love both your content, but your whole vibe, and you've just been someone that every time I see one of your posts is joyous, so it's a pleasure I was going to say in person, it's a pleasure to speak to you virtually. To start us off, you describe yourself as an overpaid Rockstar consultant, which is not your usual LinkedIn or general bio. Tell us a little bit about what that means and what you do.
So I found I have a lot of people ask the question, right? So when I walk around at a conference in my man suit, I will get a lot of people coming up. Yes, I actually wear a man suit to conference, professional events. And I will have people coming up and someone will be like, cool suit, man, or high five Batman, or the Batman's in the house, or they will engage in fun ways. So the suit in itself is a good way to draw in people. You didn't ask about the suit. You asked about the title, Overpaid Rockstar Consultant. It usually leads to 1 out of 2 outcomes. Either people think, and sometimes they tell me, but that's rare, they think, I will never work with this guy. What the hell is he doing? This is so wrong on so many levels. Goodbye. And that's good, because those people would have found out who I was at some point. So it's a good at sorting the wrong sort of people, or people who think I'm the wrong sort of people. The second thing it does is people want to hear the story. People ask, like, what's up with that overpaid Rockstar consultant? And so many of them say, I wish I was over. And when I answer, I usually have a flippant answer. I say, I found that being a consultant, it's better to be an overpaid one than an underpaid one. And then people laugh and say, yeah, I get that. And then it usually is there. The hard truth underneath that, which I will share with you and nobody, because nobody's listening to the conversation. Right?
Yeah, no one listens to the show at all. Yeah.
No. Is it's also a pricing. Because if somebody says they sell overpaid stuff, then either they're signaling their stuff is very cheap or they're quite expensive. Now, since I have a little bit of a irreverent, also an expensive, let's be fair, I write about pricing. I have a past at McKinsey. I do some stuff on big stages. I'm not cheap. And calling myself an overpaid rockstar consultant tends to help people remember that while I'm a loose sort of guy, I'm not a cheat. For those that get to that level.
I love that. So it's kind of like pre-screening. If you don't find this amusing or engaging, you're not the kind of person who want to work with me anyway.
Bingo,
And
bingo. And it allows me to see, I find that I have people who sometimes take very seriously, and sometimes joke about it, myself being one of the joking part, that the rock star human, that real rock stars tend to be a little bit, on average, assholes who don't really live up to their promises and who don't do what they're told, who trash the hotel. I'm very much not that. But there is a little of the vibe to it, but it's an ironic rock star vibe. And I find that being an overpriced rock star consultant is much more me than being a rock star vibe.
I love that. And the other thing that was occurred to me recently, if we think about rock stars, is sure there is an element of just let's call it what it is, being a dick, right? Just because I can. But there's also, I was thinking about, there's that famous story about Van Halen and the M&Ms, right? So they demanded a certain color of M&Ms, unique color of M&Ms in the bowl, and that was their way of doing security. And I double checked, this is in the autobiography, so he did write this. Now, whether it's true or not is another matter, but there is a little bit of saying, actually, part of the reason that rock stars behave like divas is to make sure that they can perform to their best, right? So you might ask for the dressing room to be a certain temperature because that keeps your voice in a place. So there is, at its core, a little bit of setting your own terms, which I sense is part of your vibe. Actually helps you to perform better, right? So you want to work with people that want to work with you. That you're not going to have to argue, that get you, that want. But ultimately, if you're hiring someone, you want to get the best out of them. So I think there's a little bit of a kind of rock star argument that says actually putting down some terms to say how to get the best out of me. And I'm not saying they all do it for just that reason. I think that's quite healthy.
That part I will agree with. Where I'm very easy to work with on like a writer level. I don't need the green M&Ms. I'll help carry the chairs if you need me to. I've done enough events to know how that's done, how stressful it is to not have people help. I have absolutely no pretentiousness on that sort of thing. But when it comes to the stage, when it comes to actually performing, I tell people, you know what, you either put me on the stage or you don't. Right? One of the reasons I've chosen not to have slides anymore, partly because it's easier, it gives me more flexibility. It's a different feel. It allows me to be more nimble if I need to change something, that sort of thing. But it's also because it's one level of control that I can then take away and put over on my desk. Because people are like, oh, we want to see your slides. Okay, so you can approve them? No, we just want to check them. Okay, then you don't need them. Well, we'd like them so we can just look at them in advance, but totally not approve them, just see if they're okay. Right? That's one thing where I find I stopped doing that. I sometimes do slides when I do virtual presentations because I like the visual support. People are sitting looking at a screen, and let's be fair, in my office at home, I'm not that interesting. On a stage, it's a little bit better. But I removed slides completely, partly to take that control back. Partly that, yes, we could call that's my green M&Ms, right? It's not that I demand the green M&Ms or the fancy hotel room or the swanky lobster dinner. But when it comes to being on stage, if I'm going to perform at my best, I will do what client or the friend or the whoever, cherry, wherever it is, I will do what I can to make them shine and happy, but I will do it my way. And if they try to manage it, then I'll say, yeah, how about no? So in that way, I buy into that. That's a little Van Halen without being a green M&M.
And so I love this. And so you talked about speaking and you dropped in the McKinsey name. Tell my listeners what it is you talk about.
So my whole shtick is getting shit done. And basically I say there are three types of experiences or moments or so on for many of us. It doesn't cover our entire existence, but it covers a pretty big part of it. Number one moment is the stuff we don't want to get done because we want it to never end, right? You're at the World Cup football, your team is playing for once. If you're Denmark, it's never playing. We did win the Euros in '92 and we'll never forget it. that sort of thing. So you're there, you're at the World Cup, you've got good seats. You're not sitting thinking, oh, I wish it would end at halftime so I could get it over. Your daughter comes and hugs you and says, Daddy, I love you. You're thinking, I want this moment to never end. It's not like, please, can you stop hugging me so Dad can do an email? Like sometimes that latter one may be the reality, but we don't want those moments to end. We want those perfect moments to last as long as they can and squeeze life out. So obviously those we don't want. The second part is stuff we do because we find it really interesting, or we find it amusing, or we find it enlightening or challenging. People who climb Mount Everest, if you installed an elevator, you would get a different crowd. You'd still get a huge crowd at Mount Everest if you installed an elevator that took you all the way to the top, where people could take their Instagram photos and then say, I was at Everest, and then go down, but you get a different crowd. People climb Mount Everest because it's hard and the world knows it's hard, right? If they just want it hard, there are many things you can do that are hard, but if you want to get it done, then you just take the helicopter somewhere tall. Right? I don't think you can take one to the top of Everest. Let's not get into that. But we don't want those things to be easier. We do them partly because of the challenge, because it's enjoyable. This conversation, I don't want this conversation. I want to be able to talk for hours if needed. If you said, Clutch, this is an 8-hour podcast, I'd say, yeah, great. Or if you said it's only 10 minutes, I'd say, oh, and here I have an excuse to talk and pretend somebody's listening. How can you take that from me? So it's also not those situations. Third ones, the pitch you need to get done for the client, the Excel that needs tightening, the boxes that need moving, the wall you need to paint, or the dinner you need to make that's not inspiring you, but it's just dinner because your kids are hungry. Those things, right? So much of our lives have things we just would like to get done. We just like to do it faster and safer, better, quicker, cheaper. That's the sort of stuff I talk about when I talk about getting shit done. Is that in my experience of whether people are C-level executives or entrepreneurs or artists or parents or just struggling along to make ends meet, the stuff they stress out about is not the exciting stuff. It's not when I say, oh, could I make my staged appearances in front of 1,000 people? Could I make them faster? No, I want to make them longer. I enjoy that shit. But it's the sending out that proposal, or getting through the emails, or doing the dishes. That's the stuff we just want to get done. And if somebody can give us ideas for how to do it in new ways, so we don't just have to commit to the pain or work harder, then my experience is that people listen. That's my space. I work within that rethinking and reframe to get things.
I love that. And so you're, in a way, right, you're helping people to deal with the failings of the human brain. And I use
Yes.
that term kind of loosely because on the one hand, it does, like the features of the brain, there's always this thing about people go, oh, well, the human brain's terrible, all these biases and whatever, right? But that's what's kept the species alive. And there are certain times, as you point out, right, where these things are useful to us. But procrastination is the classic one. And you're absolutely right. And I feel as you were talking, a few of the things that you said, right, chimed exactly with what my mind is now racing and going, I've got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And I kind of know that if I approach it in a traditional way, like half of it's not going to happen. And I'm going to have the same problem tomorrow morning, just with a slightly more embarrassed feel in my head. And so you're really helping people to say, okay, here's something that naturally happens. Let's reframe and think about it slightly differently. Here's a toolkit for kind of getting through that. So actually those things do happen.
Yes, very, very elegantly put. Thank you for that. And one of them is that I find there are two kind of classic approaches to high performance, to getting shit done at a high level, or lots of two simple ways that are very effective, both of them. But I try to offer a third way. Way number one is to simply do more, right? The Chinese 996 idea of working from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, 6 days a week, which are quite a few Chinese factories. Well, that's 72 hours of work. Of course you get more, right? Unless it's like deeply creative work or you need a lot. But if it's moving boxes, or if it's sewing plants, or if it's doing stuff where you know what the result is supposed to be, you just need to put in the hours, then that's great. I just don't want to do that. And most people I know don't want to do that. Now, if I could kind of play World Cup football 72 hours a week, now we're talking. So that's number one way of getting more shit done is simply work harder, work more. Second way is the elite sports outlook is commit to the right. I have a wonderful colleague in Denmark who works getting shit done as well, a woman named Malene, and she comes from this background in sports. She used to be like a top performing sports athlete, and she says essentially when people know they need to get something done, they realize they have a problem. Fair enough. Then they do some research. What would help with the problem? How do I lose those pounds? How do I get all the walls painted in my house, or how do I develop a new site or something like that? And then that's step number two. They're good at that. Then they do number three, which is make a plan. Okay, I will walk the dog 1 hour every day, only eat a meal. And then they do nothing because they haven't committed to the pain. And where people who are really, really like top performing sports people, they tend to commit to the pain. That's doable. I sometimes commit to the pain. I sometimes do stuff like, I don't want to do it, but I will do it anyway because the result will be, I prefer third approach. I prefer reframing, changing the game, right? So as an example, can't see it right now. Behind me is a treadmill, and hooked up to that treadmill, or just in a wobbly setup involving refrigerator, some boxes, and a closet, is a 65-inch TV screen. And that screen is coupled together with my gaming computer. So when I do gaming, I'm walking uphill at a 15% incline and play as I walk, which means that if I play 4 hours of my favorite World War II strategy game, then I walk actually about 10, 12 kilometers at 15% incline. Because even though I walk slowly, there's still quite a bit of calorie burn in walking uphill. So for me, it's not about walking, which I absolutely do not like to do for any protracted length of time. It's about gaming, which I like doing, rarely find the time for in my otherwise really busy life. But if aiming to become exercise time, because I put it in so I only play when I walk. Now we're talking. If you can do things, if you can stack things on top of each other, if you can make things more interesting or more fun, enjoyable, or meaningful, then you will done of stuff you don't really like. If you talk to your loved ones while eating dinner, well, then there's a better chance that you will set aside time for dinner. If you listen to podcasts while you're biking, oh, that's what I do. You will listen to more podcasts. If you do the dishes with your spouse, there's a good chance that you will talk more with said spouse because now you have time where you're actually talking, and then you're also dishes are second. And the moment the conversation there starts to get a little, then the motivation to do the dishes drops mightily. So rethink, reframe, instead of just committing to the pain or working hard is kind of the getting shit done approach that I champion.
I love this. And the thing I really loved is you've written a book about it, which unsurprisingly is incredibly easy to read and engaging. But you've done something amazing, which is you've given the book away for free. So firstly, tell us about the book. And secondly, tell what prompted you to give something this amazing away.
So I think the first thing about, and this is because I have absolutely no shit, is that this is not my first book. This is my book number 46.
Which
So
is insane, right? That's like
also,
J.K. Rowling levels of writing.
Not success level, but it adds a little bit also to my credibility as someone who knows how to done is the fact that I have 46 books with my name on the cover. So with that, the actual book is given away because, yes, I make a little bit of money selling books. Book sales are not a place to get rich unless you sell a lot of, and it's even harder if it's professional books and not if you're J.K. Rowling or Stephen King or somebody like that. Then whenever you make a book, there will be hundreds of millions. If you sell professional books, then you're going to have a hard time reaching those. So number one is that it is harder to actually make decent living selling professional, even though it's hard enough to sell things. The second is, for me, the books are not a money mover. They are an authority builder and a way to communicate ideas. So if I give away my books, then why would anybody, isn't that just taking away a revenue stream? Well, you could look at that. You could also say it is opening up a revenue stream because now more people can read my stuff. And some of those people might turn into people who hire me as a consultant, or who want a breakthrough session, or want me to be a speaker, or just say something nice. Or, heaven forbid, maybe even there's an impact of the book, right? Maybe I even did some good without knowing. It leads to people sometimes reading my books, otherwise probably wouldn't have. And that is best setup I can for the story you're going to tell me.
Well, yeah. So let's tell this story. So before we were recording, Klaus, I mentioned to you that my mother had seen my LinkedIn post. I always forget that she follows me on LinkedIn. So occasionally I get kind of questions about things. I'm like, where did that come from? And then I realized she'd seen it on LinkedIn. And she was really excited and had downloaded your book as a result of me posting about it. And so she then forced my dad to read a copy as well. And they're in their 80s, so then so they sort of ought to have worked life out by now. But she was really taken by this, and so I felt obliged to point out to you that it had got into a rather unusual place, and I think, it's hopefully solving domestic challenges between my parents, as both of them are now doing the things they need to do. So thank you for that. But yeah, that's a prime example, I think, of it ending up, because I wouldn't have thought to even tell her to read it. I was like, you're in your 80s, you probably you know what you like reading or not, but it just kind of resonated with her. So on her behalf, thank you.
Thank you. And to Christian's mom, should you be listening to this, thank you. That made my day.
So the model is interesting. I thought was really fascinating was yes, it's available for free, but you can also offer people the opportunity to buy it. So if they want to own a physical copy, that's also available to buy. So it's not just a free giveaway. If people want to buy it to show you some support and have a proper physical copy, that's also available. And I'll put links to these in the show notes, obviously.
Very friendly. And I just today, an Indian gentleman connected with me on LinkedIn, and I sent him, I'm experimenting with doing like a standard message where I say, hey, we connected. Here's the book in case you want it. If it doesn't resonate, don't worry, but a little bit of other stuff. And he wrote back and said, hey, Klaus, very, very nice of you. I downloaded the book. I look forward to reading it. I've also just bought a copy off Amazon to support. That was nice. That was, and I think if I just written to this guy, hey, Shruti, I see we've connected. Why don't you buy my book?
Which is what a lot of people do on LinkedIn, right? It's like immediate that someone you've never met before connects, and then 5 seconds later, it's like slaps you around the face with a sales pitch. I'm like, I don't understand that.
No, link slapping or sales slapping or pitch slapping was the expression I heard from Shane, a friend of mine, that you could pitch slap, that you just open up and then suddenly are like, hello, sir, when can we meet for the first meeting? Here's my calendar. And if Tuesday the 14th doesn't fit you, then please call me and we'll make another. How about And I find that books are nice because they are a way of packaging communication. And that means that you can either sell that package, sure, but you can also give it away. And if I can do, that's another book for anybody who cares to listen, is that if I go to you, Chris, let's say we just connected on LinkedIn, we've just met, or any other social. And then you say, hey, Klaus, nice to be connected. I say, nice to be connected. We're fine. The day after, I send you a piece of text and say, hey, Christian, here's my tip on how to deal with salesmen. They were like, okay, well, that's my thing. I don't know where it came from, but fair. And then the day after, I send you another, hey, Christian, here's another tip on how to deal with salesmen. It's not the same as the first, but it's in the same ballpark. You think, okay, well, it's actually good, but this is sort of weird. Like, when did I subscribe to your newsletter? I didn't. What's going on here? Third day. Hey, Christian, here's a tip on why salespeople are as they are. Okay, obviously this guy's got a thing about salespeople, but this one wasn't that good. What is going on? After a week, you're going to either be a super fan, unlikely, or you are going to have block. That's pretty obvious that if you just start sending people stuff out of the blue, they're going to think you're a weirdo and probably not in the charming. Now imagine I put 50 of those tips together in a book called 50 Tips on How to Deal with Salespeople, and I send it to you as it's a book. because then you can just say, yeah, not my thing, delete it, done. Or you can say, oh, interesting. I would like to take this. When the guy gives me his book, that's a kind human. So in one hand, you have where you are forcing yourself on people 50 times in a row. Once a week, you get this new chapter, and you're thinking, I never signed up for this in one wrong person. And you're never going to get all the way through because you're going to stop way before that. The other, you get the package, the book, and then suddenly it's a nice stuff. Even if it's the same. It's almost like the human brain is wired to perceive experiences differently, even if the mathematical core behind them is the same. And sometimes in this world of AI and data, we tend to forget. Let the engineers run the show. No, no, no. Let us have all us behavioral designers and tricksters give us a shot. Rant over.
But I tell you what I love about all of this is, on the one hand, you're being incredibly human, right? So you're thinking this through, and the difference between you and the sort of the pitch slapping, I love that phrase, right, is that you're kind of going, let me think about what this will feel like for the person on the other end of it, and how can I make that experience as relevant and not necessarily pleasurable, because if they don't like it, you're giving them the option, but they can walk away. You're not constantly harassing them. So it's you're thinking about the person that's there and how they'll react to it. And therefore people that will love it, you're giving them something amazing. People that not, you're not hassling them excessively. So there's a real thought process there. And I love that, but it goes against a lot of the 21st century sales thing where people talk about sales funnels and this and that and everything else. And for me, what I love about yours is, on a visceral level, it's just a nicer way of doing things. It's a much more human way of doing things, but it does go against a lot of these kind of, I guess, hucksterage sales things that everybody, if you look out there and say how to do sales, typically it won't be advising what you're advising. It'll be advising the opposite end of the spectrum. And so I'm trying to square those two things, because I want to live in your world, right? Because I think that's much more human, much better. It means that, you know, you're connecting well with the people that want to connect with you. You're not hassling the people that don't. That just feels like a much nicer place to be and a much more authentic place to be. And yet conventional wisdom at the moment seems to be the opposite.
So there's a thing at play here, which is, so there's several overlapping things. One of them, let's talk for a moment, which might be interesting to the part of your crowd enjoys, like this whole behavioral science, behavioral economics, behavioral design. And I know you have some of those out there listening. We hear you, even if we don't really. There's a thing from my role-playing past, which I didn't invent, but I did coin a term for it called unnecessary production. And I find that quite useful in behavioral science. It has like actual terms, which I remember. Of course, I use my own. And that is that if you do something in a way that's as easy as possible, then it might be efficient on paper. But if there's a human involved, they might not appreciate that efficiency. So imagine you get 2 wedding invitations. Wedding invitation number 1, it's an email saying, "Dear Christian, Ross and I would like to see you at our wedding on the 27th of January. And click here for the sign up link." Okay, well, that's so easy. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to, here's the date. You just click, and then you automatically get to the RSVP where you say, yes, I'd like to come, or sadly I can't make it, or no, you horrible, will never work.
Or who the hell are you?
Which is rarely on wedding invitations, let's be fair. But let's say that that's the thing. It's super easy and it's simple and so on. That's your one wedding invitation. The other wedding invitation, it arrives at your doorstep. It's physical. It's old school. It is an envelope that is handcrafted. And inside it, when you enter it, you get, the first thing you get is like a whiff of tree, because somebody bothered enough to put something smell. And then there is this poem written on a link that says, "At our wedding, where it will be not just you and me, but also my forever be." Something beautiful. It's Ross and my wedding, and we're going to get married on the 27th of January. If you want to see if you can come or not, go to this link. And because we still use email to make it for you, you don't have to send a leaf back, but you're getting this handcrafted, personal, slightly quirky, but very much me and Ross, because we're wood people and everybody knows that. which one of these weddings you feel most like, oh, I love that invitation. Was it the one that was super easy for you? Or was it the one where it was also an experience?
Obviously, the leafy one.
Obviously, right? Because it's a wedding and you put a little bit of effort. But if it's a meeting, you have a meeting that starts in 2 hours, and it's with you and Rachel and Aqua down from accounting. And there's a messenger that comes in costume and does a fanfare and starts reading a little bit of tennis before saying, Lord Affluent and Lady Rachel invite you to a meeting in accounting at 2. Even though you might appreciate when that's gone on for 15 minutes, you're like, guys, next time you say, because there you want efficiency. You want it to be simple. You want it to auto lock into your calendar. You don't want to have to translate the reading. You don't want to have to say to everybody else in the office, yeah, guys, I don't know who he is either, but sorry, right? There are times in our life where we want things to be efficient. There are times in our life we want things to be experience. And knowing when to kind of push which sliders can be pretty critical.
And that takes us beautifully to one of the other things that you do, which is it's almost like we planned this, and we didn't. We never planned these things out, but we've got ourselves nicely in a position to talk about events. Tell us a little bit about what you do there.
So when it comes to the events, I'm on my second career, right? For many, many years, I was a pioneer in the live action role playing space. I built what ended up becoming the world's largest live action role play design studio. And we're not talking Miramax or Time Warner here. This is slightly smaller, but we were 50 people in 10 different countries when we were our biggest. And then I crashed it spectacularly, leaving myself in, which means I'm now on my second career where I'm slowly climbing out of that. Having now learned how to make money, which is new. I did not know how to do that. Then I was definitely underpaid and not over. But it means that right now, as I work with these sort of getting shit done thing, space, extraordinary experience space, I do have an event cast. I have more than 1,000 live events under. I still run something called College of Extraordinary Experiences, which is a place where people from many different industries, backgrounds, nationalities, careers go to unlock new ways of thinking about their business. And that is a 5-day event at a 13th century castle in Poland. It's a little bit mad. It's a little bit Harry Potter. We dress up participants in robes. They get sorted into houses. We have professors. It's a little bit weird, a little bit magical, a little crazy, but also quite wonderful. And is something where people go and they come back, many of them, with new ways of looking at their work lives and their private life as well. That's the pitch is unlocking new ways. So that is an event I do, and then I sometimes help clients do events as well, because I do have that background. When they say, Claus, we're doing this conference, and you were a great speaker last year. Do you have any tips for us? I said, well, about that. Yeah, I might have. Let's talk.
Because what I think is really interesting is the speakers often are brought in as a sort of like, we'll just drop you into, we've organized this thing. We're going to give you 30 minutes or whatever it is, right? We're going to give you this little slot. You do your little thing. And I think there's something really interesting about thinking more broadly about the overall experience. And once you've done, if you're a conference organizer, you tend to know your own, but obviously you don't necessarily know what else is going on out there at the same time because you may not be going to them all. And so what I love about what you're talking about is really taking your obvious, I mean, you're clearly an engaging person, right? Your obvious skills of communication, recognizing what engages people, is to sort of go, well, I can help you create something that's a bit more than that, right? Let's look at how do we make my bit part of a larger show. And so I love this fact that not only have you got this business where you're organizing, and that event in Poland looks amazing, by the way, and I really want to go this year. I can't because I've got a clashing event, but I will pre-book myself on the next one. But I love the fact that you're kind of taking this speaking thing and the event thing and sort of looking and bringing the two things together. And so this idea of sort of like, if you know how to hold an audience on a stage, you speak at loads of conferences, you've probably got some other ideas that you can bring in to help people curate just a better overall experience, right?
Definitely. I think that anybody who does a ton of speaking and anybody who goes to a ton of conferences in general will have things that are like, oh, why does it like this? And if you start by saying, why is it like this? It's pretty easy to go to. Maybe it could be like that. So I think on that is that there is a huge advantage to talking to speakers at events or people who just go to a lot of events because they will have ideas on how. I have both that because I do a lot of and I go to a lot of them. And then I have a huge advantage that I come from this past and doing role plays. And there is a quote from an old friend of mine, a role playing and kind of immersive designer called Jakob Phillips, Danish guy. And he said many years ago, so I quote him on it extensively, he said, everything is a designable surface. And the moment you look at your event like that, then suddenly the world explodes. Because if you can't get rid of the long queue to the toilets because you only have a certain amount of toilets, why not design to it? If you already know that you don't have big AV budgets, then why not design around that instead of trying to compromise? If you want people to talk, put a sign on their tables that says, at this table, we talk about marketing, or at this table, we talk about tennis, or whatever it is. And people say, oh, I want to sit at that table. Because suddenly it's legitimate to talk to other people. Change your name tag. Change the way you are doing your visitor flow. Change all sorts of things. Change your booth design. Once you get into that, everything is a designable surface mode of thinking. Then even if you don't have a ton of experience, then suddenly you go, oh, wait, we could do something. And one of the things I often ask event organizers is, how are the toilets included in your event? And most of them go, what? What do you mean? I said, well, toilets are a place that almost everybody visits during.
What you hope so,
right? Like almost everybody's going to go there.
Right. Well, if they haven't, they've not hung around at your event, right? So it's like
exactly right. Usually, more or less, everybody's going to go there. It's very much a standard experience, right? You either go and you pee in a urinal if you're one of the men who just needs, or if you are somebody who needs to do more, or of the female persuasion who isn't skilled at peeing in urinal, then you sit in a small booth, maybe a small room, and then you have an experience with yourself that you just want to get done because let's not go for the obvious fun, but it's usually not something you want to prolong. And you're sitting there and you're usually looking straight ahead. And the question is, how many organizers have an experience that is designed for that, which that experience may be had by thousands of people at their event. How many of them have some? And when you look at their face, they go, oh, or I guess we could do something. We've never thought of that. No, that's the place to start. I'm not saying necessarily what you should do, but I sometimes poke at people to get them to think different.
And as you were talking, I love this. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the two meanings of the word experience, right? So one is I've done this a lot, and one is what it feels like. And the thing I find interesting is actually, in a way, if you have done something a lot, the sort of I'm an expert, I've got many years of experience, that doesn't necessarily equip you to think about things in the way that you're talking about delivering a new experience, right? Because chances are you will roll out the same thing, right? This seemed to work last year, so we'll do the same thing. And I find it astonishing how many conferences, to your point, feel exactly the same, right? You kind of know the thing. You're going to turn up to some hotel somewhere. You're going to have to walk up some stairs or take the thing to the first floor, walk to the ballroom, right? And then you check in at this desk where you get given this badge that you sort of somehow have to click. And you go through this sort of formulaic thing. And it occurs to me that actually to get to the thought processes you're having, you need a fresh perspective. So ironically, experience doesn't necessarily help you it might help you, it'll run well, but it won't necessarily be a real experience.
Bingo. And one of the things I preach a lot is go out and get inspired. Go to things you otherwise wouldn't go to. Go to an astrology conference. If you're an astrologer, go to an insurance banking conference. Go to a circus. Go to a children's playground. Watch some My Little Pony. Look at some Korean TV. Do something different because, yes, a lot of the stuff you see or do will not be interesting, but there may also be other things where you're saying, whoa, oh, you can do it that way. Go with an open mind to places where you are unfamiliar because that will also allow you to say, oh, do this different. Right? When I talk, one of the simple things is when I talk to event organizers about when their event starts, most of them have, especially if you're traveling from out of town, go to a hotel, check in, even if the event is run at the hotel, the whole check-in procedure is run by the hotel staff. So the first experience you have if you're lucky, somebody says hi to you at the door, but that's rare. Usually you go, you have your first interaction with the hotel staff and your last interaction with the hotel staff. And anybody who is into any sort of research about hospitality will know that the check-in is pretty critical. In the words of Roy Sutherland, great hero of mine, if you love the check-in, you will love the ice. And if you hate the check-in, you will think the ice sculpture is kind of shit. And since that is not really up for debate anymore, that is so well underpinned by surveys and facts and reports, that data driven. Anybody who says we're going to do an event, but let's not own the welcome. Like, okay, that's good, but are you also going to blindfold people? Well, that might at least be a good thing, right? Because then they're definitely going to have a new experience. So one of the things we do at the College of Extraordinary Experiences is that we own the welcome, and we own the welcome before the welcome. But it also means, from a practical standpoint, where we can create an experience when people get off the bus at Pryszków Castle in Poland. 100 people get off that bus, and 15 minutes later, they have all put down their stuff in their rooms and are ready to get started. The amount of hotels who can handle even that number of check-ins within 15 minutes is actually quite low. And that's usually because they are huge hotels where you don't have 100 people, but you have 1,000. Because most hotels, the way they work is people arrive, there's a steady stream of in and out, and that means you have 2 or 3 people at the front desk instead of 18 people. But here we design a specific check experience, which is meant to go fast, fun, and human. And that means we get to solve a logistical problem and craft experience around that is memorable and quite fun, and also helps spread our ethos vibe, and people get to meet some older participants, yada, yada, yada. All these nice things squashed into one sandwich, which also solves the logistics problem of checking with all of that, because we've chosen to own the welcome before the welcome.
I love that. Absolutely love that, because, what you're brilliantly pointing at there is just, I mean, I put it in really simple terms, right? You're just thinking stuff through, right? This
Yes.
is stuff that's overlooked.
Yes.
And I think
that's
Go
the
on.
thing. Sorry to cut in, but that's the thing. It's not because everybody thinks, like, let's be fair. People, especially if they are hardcore professionals, 20 years ago, they think stuff through. What they don't think through is the stuff that they don't even think. That's where the trick is. That's why I preach so much mindset change, inspiration, rethinking, and reframing it. That yes, experience allows you to make sure things run smoothly, but you operate within what you know. Getting inspiration allows you to realize, oh, there may be things I don't know that maybe would be advantageous if I actually knew or thought. The amount of time I've talked to event organizers about name tag design, that's not a small amount of time.
What you're pointing towards, on the one hand, right? Like my sense is you absolutely want to make sure everybody is safe, do all the sensible things, right? So there are going to be rules in place of things that you can't do because they're dangerous or they push it too far. But equally, you're scrapping a load of rules. So it's an interesting. I'm guessing what you're doing is saying, what are the minimum things that we absolutely need? We have to keep people safe, right? Not least from a commercial perspective, otherwise they're not going to come back, or they're not going to say positive things about it. But also, it's a nice thing not to injure people or worse on an event, right? So those are sort of, and there's laws that underpin that stuff as well. So you've got those constraints. But beyond that, there are no rules, right? You're thinking freely about what you do. And so I love this idea of using the minimal rules that you need to have as a constraint, because we can't have unlimited things. We need to have some form of constraint to help the creativity flow. But beyond that, you're pretty open-minded.
Yes, very much so. And I think part of it is that there's some mindsets I find that once you unlock them, then they're hard to put back in the box, right? Once you have gotten on the feminist glasses, then it's really hard to stop seeing the world. And that's true for a lot of things, right? So as an example, this is many years ago, my ex-wife and I moving to a new apartment. We were getting our first We went from like a young people's apartment to like a mature people in their late 20s apartment. And it had more space than we need. And our discussions were not about should we have a washing machine or not, or should we have a dishwasher or not. The discussions were should we have 2 or 3 dishwashers or not, and should we have 2 washing machines or only 1. And here I came up against. We ended up luckily having 2 dishwashers and 2 washing machines, etc. And one of the first discussions was, I said we should have 2 washing machines, and Marie, my wonderful ex-wife, said, "No, but it's just going to take up space, and it's not going to be. It's going to be unnecessary. It's going to take up more space." And I said, "This is a 98 square meter. We are 2 people, and a washing machine takes zero point 0 or 0.36 square meters of space. Yes, then it takes up some in front or blah, blah, blah. Plus we could stack them. We already had 3 of them stacked on top. The old apartment, the Tower of Power. So we were already beyond that. But then we get the question, why is it smarter to have 2 washing machines than 1? Question for you, Christian. Why is it smarter to have 2 washing machines than 1?
Well, so the dishwasher argument, I understand, and we can come on to that. But the washing machine one, I'm guessing you can have 1 each, right?
You
So
could have 1 each. That's one way.
one way of looking at it. The other way is that actually you need a place to dump dirty washing, so that's not unhelpful. So you've got somewhere you can stick dirty washing while the clean stuff goes in another one. You don't necessarily have to run them at the same time.
But you don't
Yeah, you can. We all tend, if we have 1 washing machine, we tend to sort of do. Well, I speak for myself here, right? I tend to do sort of. It's almost like it's the classic thing about averages, right? You guys kind of go, here's a load. I can't be bothered to sort stuff properly, so I'm just going to do something that doesn't necessarily clean. It's not the most energy efficient way of cleaning because I've got this mixed load, right? So I just have to be a bit careful with it, and
So you
therefore
could
I
have
could
specialized load.
right.
There's also the advantage that if you need to, you can get through dirty laundry twice as fast. You can go from bad to good twice as fast should you need to. You could, it was you said, you could divide it, right? You could have this machine with your colors. This is your washing machine. This is mine. It gives you different options. You could have more specific loads. There's also the advantage that what if your washing machine breaks down? While it's getting fixed, you still have washing capacity. Instead of, oh no, now it's chaos because for the next week or 2, or oh, when can we craft and it's suddenly a non-stressful situation because you're now operating at 50% capacity, which is enough for most situations, instead of, oh no, there's chaos. So there are all these tiny advantages that may or may not be relevant to having a washing machine. And the only thing you sacrifice is you sacrifice an initial investment. You need to put in more money because 2 does cost more than 1. But let's be fair, they're not that expensive in the modern world. And if you really care, then it's easy. And 2, yes, it takes up space. But again, 98 square meters, I think we have the space. And it opens up this arena of possibility once you start thinking that. Because what most people do is they don't think that, they don't make the decision. Okay, I see your points, Klaus, but we don't think the initial investment is worth it. We don't want to spend that extra £100 or whatever it is, €100. We don't want that. We'd rather take another trip to Paris. Okay, cool enough. Then it's a considered decision. Or they say we have a small place. We don't have your 98 square meters, so let's do something that's smaller. Okay, fair enough. These are decisions, but most people say, oh, 2 washing machines, that's weird, or that's silly, or we couldn't do that. Right? It's not a considered argument. I have nothing people saying this is not going to work, or we don't want to do that, or but when it's, oh, but that's not doable. And the amount of people I've taught washing machines and dishwashers with who started by, oh, but that makes no sense to, I can't believe why I hadn't done that, is astounding. Because it wasn't due to rational arguments they haven't tried it. It was because the idea that you could have that was just beyond them. And when they saw it, they looked at it with ridicule. One of the key things is getting past ridicule. Right? Somebody suggests something new, saying, what if we did it for free? What if we paid our participants to go to our event? I had a thing with, I was doing leadership training for some Saudi Arabian bankers a couple of years ago in Jeddah. And at one point, they're talking about how to stand out from the other banks and say, well, what if you gave your people who worked at your bank, everybody who's an employee, what if you gave them negative interest on their savings if they had them? So we will pay you to have money in our bank here for loan, right? For not money they have sitting there, but you gave them not 0% loan, but you gave them negative interest loan. Borrow money from us and we will pay you to have it. And they said, that's impossible. We can't do that. That's I don't know. I said, what would it cost? What's the difference in cost for somebody taking their house loan between paying 0% interest, which you're okay with doing, you just told me, and paying the 1% interest to have the loan? Ah, okay, so there's a cost. Fair enough. Do you think they're going to work at your bank for long?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, you have their loan there. Yeah, of course. Oh, so you've now given your skilled workers who you want to keep forever, because you've told me that as well. You've given them an incentive to go out and buy expensive homes because they will make money off the loan. Okay, so they're going to get bigger loans and they will stay with the bank because they're not going to get that deal anywhere else. Okay, well, let's just say, does that sound like an incentive to like your workplace and stay there? Uh-huh. And then some of them just had crossed arms and this, yeah, but you can't do that. But a couple of them had this look on their like this strange, bewildered, oh, that closet leads to Narnia. Where maybe we could do that, or maybe we couldn't do that, but then we could do this. And suddenly they were banging out ideas. It starts with going past the ridiculous. I mean, if there's one thing that is the most misunderstood out there about brainstorming, about idea generation, there you always get told this, oh, but when we're brainstorming, the sky's the limit and don't think about budget, about it. It could be on the moon. And I used to hate that. I used to think that's so stupid. Then somebody framed me in a different way, said, when you say, what about if it was on the moon? It's not about it being on the moon. It's about when somebody says, what if it's on the moon? Then somebody else says, huh, what if it was in a different location? Oh, what if it was in Switzerland? Oh, we could do Switzerland. We can't do the moon, but we got the moon idea from something. And then the moon idea led to the Switzerland idea. The Switzerland idea led to the France idea. The France idea led to the warehouse idea. And suddenly we now have a warehouse investing. It's killing off iterations too quick instead of giving them time to develop. And that means that if you could unlock people's minds to ask, okay, tell me more, or okay, how would that work? Or okay, what made you think of that? Or what does that inspire? Then you can get to interesting places. Because it wasn't about were they going to actually do this negative interest thing. It was about getting them to see we could. And if we think we could, then maybe there's a lot of other stuff. Could you have two dishwashers? Surprising amount of people don't even consider why it's smart. They just start with, oh, but that's silly or I can't do that. And I loved having. So glad I won the recent fight. My better half, not my ex-wife, but my better half, where I live with, about two refrigerators, where she was like, wait. And there's even a wrestle argument because there it just costs you more money to have two refrigerators. There's a higher cost of operations. Where the two dishwashers, they don't cost more just then. They only cost what. So this open up for new ways will probably give you a better chance of leading to stuff that you actually want to do instead of stopping. Oh, but we do that. Never say we can't do that. Say, I don't think that would solve the problem. Do that. Or I don't see how that could work. Tell me more instead of, oh, that's not. Unless you things like legality and physics and so on. Yeah. Sure. It's not like I said, oh, let's just do this. But it might lead.
And I love this because this sits nicely with the kind of world of improv, right?
Yes.
Where improvisers work together, and if one of them takes it in a certain direction, you don't shut it down. You just build off whatever's there, right? And they
Yes.
might have put you in a place you were not expecting to be, but that's just that's a feature, not a bug, right? It's just like, how do we go from wherever this has taken us to the next thing? And you're right. It's that whole mentality is just excluded. You can't have a meeting where you talk about crazy ass ideas because this is a meeting and we need to talk about serious stuff. And I'm like, I actually think lots of things in life, the more serious it is, the more creative we need to be, both in terms of the communication and the thinking around it, because it really matters. And so I love the way you're talking there, because in a way, what's the harm of having some stupid ideas out there? Like this, like there's doesn't mean you have to action them. It just means it's taking you to another place. And this resistance to that, I find fascinating.
Yes, and to borrow from the world of
Right.
improv, this resistance, and I'll give you very low key. This is from my mother and stepfather, happily married for many years, are inspiring people who are dearly for quite a few years in their old villa. My stepfather had a home office for work at home, and when he would sit there, he used to be a professor. He actually still is professor of computer science. It's just at a different university, but he used to be a professor of computer science at the University of Copenhagen. And sometimes he would do work from home office day. And when he would do those, he would sit in his office and he would go through mails and letters and all sorts of stuff. He's quite efficient. And my mother would drop by and look in and say, "Hey, here, can you later maybe take out the trash or do this thing?" Or like some sort of small thing that he doesn't mind doing and would probably get done. And sometimes these things wouldn't get done. And she got annoyed at that. And he said, after I don't know how many conversations about it, he said, "Can we try something new? What if you send me an email instead of dropping by and saying it? Because then it goes into my workflow. If I'm doing emails anyway, then an email that says go out with the trash or fix lunch for the kids or whatever it is that we're doing, then would go into his workflow." And she said, "It shouldn't be necessary for me to send an email to my husband in our home when he is working at home. That should not be necessary." He said, "Yeah, could we try it?" And for years, she resisted. At one point, she actually did it. And I think we all know where this story is going. Right? It didn't change. No, of course it changed. Of course it changed. Because then he had his workflow. And they said, "Oh, dang, there's a new task. It's in my workflow. I'll do it." Or, "Okay, I need to answer this one first. I'll do it after." Because it wasn't, the method of delivery was suddenly within his workflow. And every time it was a mail, he could see, okay, you try. Instead of there's a verbal message and you hear it, you have the best of intention, but then you need to answer the mail from Bjana or that report isn't finished or whatever it was. And then you don't get it done because you didn't write it down, or maybe you wrote it down on some note paper and then it's somewhere on the desk and there's a million other things. It wasn't the task that it was opposed to. It was the message of delivery, the method of delivery for receiving the task. He said, "Let's not change the task. Let's change the method of delivery." And the resistance was for years. And whenever I tell that story, I sometimes do that in front of bigger crowds. They always laugh. And so many of them have that. Oh, I see where I am. I see where I'm both of these people. I see places in my life where I'm your stepfather asking, "Could we try it differently?" And I see places where I am your mother, just saying, "No, that shouldn't be necessary." And I'm sure they've had other things that aren't as good stories, but the other way around, that this resistance to solutions that might work because we feel it shouldn't be needed. Like I shouldn't have to have a special place that says keys. You keep losing your keys, so maybe it wouldn't be bad to have a place to hang them and it says keys just in case you forget why that thing is there. Yeah, but it shouldn't be necessary. No, it shouldn't. And I even, if we take it to business context, I used to have, when I owned a weapons factory. Let's drop there, right?
Yeah, we'll come back to that, right?
It was a latex weapon factory. We did soft weapons for role playing, etc., leather armor, that sort of thing. Not actual weapons, but I used to have a weapon. And our production chief, who was absolutely brilliant, a little bit mad, but absolutely brilliant. He kept on insisting that we should tell customers it would take them 6 weeks for us to create a batch so their order could get delivered. And we never did anything in 6 weeks. It was always 7 or 8 because something would go wrong. This was a complex production with so many moving parts. And I said, "Christopher, can we change it? Can we tell them that we're going to deliver?" He said, "No, because it takes 6. I said, "But it never takes 6. It said, "It takes 6. Nothing goes wrong." I said, "Yes. And something always goes wrong. So let's tell them it's 8 weeks and then we can deliver faster than that." Instead of later than it. So no, we shouldn't tell them that because it takes 6 weeks. There's no reason to tell them 8, which will mean that they feel it's less valuable because it takes, but it doesn't take 6 weeks. It takes 6 weeks on paper. Let's come up with those others. And no, it shouldn't be necessary because we should be able to fix this. And yes, within the last year, we have not delivered once in 6 weeks. So could we please change the framing instead of the reality, which seems to be hard? Just he wasn't. His mind didn't work that way because to him it took 6 weeks to make a production, even if reality had shown him it didn't.
I love that because it's, the interesting thing is if the 6 weeks were really critical to people buying the product, right? In other words, if you tell me it's 7 weeks, I'm walking away from this, then maybe there's an interesting thing where you go, we have to sort of stretch it a little bit, right? But fundamentally, it's dishonest, actually, if you looked at it. You sort of go,
Yes.
we know on average it takes this 8 weeks or whatever, right? So let's just declare that up front. Now, chances are, in that context, it's not going to bother people at all. What will bother them more, back to your point around the ice sculpture, what will bother them more is like, you told me you were going to do this and now you have failed.
Yes.
As opposed to the initial promise was slightly different and you have improved on it. And I just think that it's such a simple point, but we all intuitively know that, right? We know, I mean, one of my favorite questions is to ask people, we look in the context of the work I do, is ask people what pisses them off, right? In the context of rules and regular, because that's a really good indicator as where you have either you already have a problem, those are the rules they're bending, right? Because they don't respect them, or those are the rules they will bend when push comes to shove, right? Really simple piece of feedback. But I think that visceral emotional thing is if we could stop pissing people off and just make them happy, the world will be in a better place. And we don't, to your point, we don't necessarily have to change reality. We just have to change how they look at the world, the framing of it. And so it's a really simple point, but like it seems to be missed in quite a few places, which is an opportunity for us to go and have these conversations, but it's quite frustrating.
It is. And there's also, I think part of it is the idea that the more we think rules and truths instead of context, the more we end up with things where, oh, well, now I understand it. And now it's always like this. Young, a freelancer of mine many years ago, he was going to pick me up. We were going to a gig. He was going to pick me up at a railway station and he was 10 minutes late. I said, Toby, when you're 10 minutes late for something like this, please let me know when I write you and say, hey, what's your ETA? Then those 10 minutes matter. And he said, yeah, sorry, Claus. I didn't understand that they mattered because you are never even the slightest bit annoyed when I'm delayed for meetings normally. So why right now getting the shit treatment? I say, Toby, that is true. However, if you will notice, when I'm in my office where I'm warm at my desk working on stuff, if you're 10 minutes late, normally it's a non-problem. If you're 10 minutes late when it's here, I'm standing in the rain. I don't know when you're coming because you've already gone overtime. I don't know if you're going to 10, 15, 20, are you coming at all? You're not answering. You're not answering the call. You're not answering the text. Then suddenly those 10 minutes matter. If it's you're just delayed for a thing at the office and I know you're probably going to be delayed, so I don't really, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't bug me at all. Worst thing happens is I can say, Toby, you're delayed and I've stepped into the next meeting, so you'll have to wait. So, right? But if I'm the one in the rain during the wait, then those 10 minutes matter a lot. Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I guess I just thought that you were a guy who was never annoyed when people were late. I said, well, general, I try not to be, but it's a matter of what is my experience with them being late. And there's sometimes where I don't mind at all, plenty of time. But if I'm waiting in the rain, in the cold, and I don't know how long the wait is going to be, yeah, then my Zen-like patience it doesn't last as long as it does in my nice office where I can just do another email or chill on.
But I love that because we also understand that this brings us right back to the beginning of the conversation, right? We all intuitively understand that 1 minute on a spin bike, right, or waiting at the bus stop feels like an eternity. 1 minute while you're doing something pleasurable, and we can all imagine what that might be, right, feels very, very quick. And it's the same time thing. It's just a totally different context. And so what I love about the way you think, but also the way you talk about it, is these things are not, it's not like sort of here's Klaus's business wisdom, right? And you have to get your head around it. What you're doing is taking things that if we thought about them, we intuitively understand in our personal lives, And you're just kind of going, let's just think about that. And actually, why should those experiences be any different? Well, the same human OS that we're walking into the office or logging into the office with. So I love this thing. It's taking things we intuitively understand and just going, hey, also applies over here, by the way. You just have to recognize it.
Thank you. And if we want to take that in a business context, there are many businesses, there are many sectors, many kind of professions where the standard of payment is per hour. Right? You get paid a certain amount per hour. Maybe you get 15 euros per hour. Maybe you get 150 euros per hour. Whatever it is, you pay per hour. And sometimes that makes sense. If I'm hiring somebody to stand in my shop and sell things, and if they leave an hour before, then there will be nobody to serve customers from 4 to 5. So pretty nice that they're there for the full time. Okay. I'm buying their time. Yes, I'm also buying their skill set, their expertise, and their attitude, but the time makes sort of sense. I could pay the same person per kilometer they walk in the store, because obviously they walk more, they serve more customers. That would be a way. But it makes some sort of sense to pay them by the hour. For so many others, really doesn't. Right? When clients ask me what my hourly rate is, I will say you can pay me by the hour. But to be honest, I don't. It's a lot of sense, and say, why not? I'll say, well, if you want to pay me by the hour, I will speak very slow and thoughtful, and I will ask many questions. They say, oh, so you're saying that I'm building in a monetary incentive for you to be ineffective and slow by paying you by the hour. I say, well, I didn't say that, but maybe that's exactly what I said. I think it's this idea that if you are buying people at an hourly rate, then you want them to use as few hours as possible. Okay, fair enough. If you're buying people at an hourly rate, they want to use as many hours as possible. Huh. So the first thing you're doing, just by the pricing, we're not talking about skills, we're not talking about anything, just by the modality of pricing, you are building in a wedge between the client and whoever is providing the service. Yeah, that sounds smart. Let's do more of that. And we all intuitively have this, yeah, that doesn't sound that smart, but isn't most of the world built around hourly? Wait a minute, I see where this guy.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And you have my mind racing on a number of things I'm working on where the arrangements have those dynamics. Claus, as I knew would happen, right, time has just raced away. I want to say thank you, firstly, just for generally inspiring me. As I say, you were just a rare beacon of amazingness on LinkedIn, which also, by the way, the bit I love as well is connect with you, right? That opens up a whole other universe. And so there's a model I have now, which is go on LinkedIn and seek interesting people, because that will open you up to other interesting networks. And there's a ton of people that I have got to know. You didn't even know this, got to know through, you've performed a valuable service without even realizing it, right? You've connected me to a whole lot of other people because I've seen your universe and I'm getting sort of to know some other people in that. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Thanks for the books and all the things you put out there. But above all, right now, thank you for being an amazing guest on the show. Before I let you go, tell people how they can get hold of you if they want to have you come and speak or just generally advise them on life.
First off, thank you for that. Very nice words, and very much appreciate. And how people can get hold of me. Well, one is the College of Extraordinary Experiences can be found at extraordinary.com, because of course it can. And if you want to find me, Claus Raasted, there's only one of me in the world, for better and worse. And I think that's probably the best in general. And that means that my website is klausraasted.com. There's only one Claus Raasted on LinkedIn. And that means I'm reasonably easy to find. And should you make the mistake of Googling my name, it will lead you down a digital rabbit hole that I do not suggest anybody go down. Because there is weird stuff, there's bad stuff, there's good stuff, there's interesting stuff, there's just the plain what. But we won't go into that now. So if you want to find, I'm surprisingly easy to find. If you don't want to find, then I'm also quite easy to kind of.
That is the best ending to the show ever. Claus, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. So that is it for this episode of the show. My enormous thanks to you for listening and to Claus for appearing. To find out more about him and to discover his amazing book, Claus Raasted's Little Book of Getting Shit Done, have a look in the show notes. You'll find links to that there and the College of Extraordinary Experiences. Now remember, the book, you can download it for free or buy a physical copy if you'd prefer. If this is your first time listening to the Human Risk podcast, wherever you've been, thank you so much for joining me. You can subscribe wherever you get your quality audio content. It's available on all of the major podcasting platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, then please consider leaving a review. It helps others to discover the show. That gives me a reason to keep making it, and it helps me to attract guests like Claus. To discover episodes that you might have missed, and there are over 334 of them now, visit humanriskpodcast.com. I will be back very soon with another episode of this show. But in the meantime, stay safe. Try tackling one small thing you've been putting off. Do it badly, do it quickly. But as Nike likes to tell us, just do it. But above all, thank you so much for listening.